Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com. If you enjoy our show, don't forget to help us out by subscribing to this podcast, sharing it with a friend, and providing us with a review on iTunes. Check out the show notes below for the link. Thanks, and enjoy the show.
In today's podcast, we're going to be going over the latest scandal that Big Four accounting firm PwC is facing. Some big news was released in the final days of 2017 regarding PwC's role in the Colonial Bank audit. If you pay attention to our website or this podcast, you know that PwC has faced a lot of liability with regard to the Colonial Bank audit, which was tied in with PwC's audit of Taylor Bean, where they faced billions of dollars of liability from that lawsuit. PwC's name was dragged through the mud in that case, as it seemed like they did limited to no audit work in that audit. And they were initially sued by the bankruptcy trustee for Colonial Bank and Taylor Bean. And after a few months of terrible litigation for PwC, they were eventually able to settle for an undisclosed amount. Now it seems that PwC faces even more liability from this Colonial Bank audit. So what is the background of the latest case? The background of this Colonial Bank case was that Colonial Bank is a bank that was based out of Alabama, and they were audited by PwC from 2002 to 2009, and they collapsed in 2009. And the FDIC had to pay out the deposit holders of Colonial Bank. Now, what did Colonial Bank do wrong to go under? Colonial Bank bought hundreds of millions of dollars of mortgages from Taylor Bean that Taylor Bean didn't own or had already pledged to other lenders. And there was an individual at Colonial Bank named Catherine Kissick who helped Taylor Bean perpetrate the fraud. And Colonial Bank also had many other failed investments and strategies other than the fraud perpetrated by this individual. And the latest liability that PwC faces comes from the FDIC, who is suing PwC because the FDIC had to pay out the deposit holders who lost their money from the collapse of Colonial Bank. Now, what is PwC saying about this? PwC alleges that auditors aren't insurers under the current accounting rules. PwC alleges that even accountants cannot detect all fraud, even if an audit is well planned. Therefore, PwC shouldn't have to back up the FDIC if the FDIC has to support a bank failure. Now, what does the FDIC say to that? The FDIC says that PwC's negligence was so blatant that PwC should hold some responsibility for not alerting others to the fraud that was going on at Colonial Bank. If PwC had properly planned their audit, they could have easily detected this fraud. And that's what the FDIC says. The FDIC stated that if PwC just sampled some mortgages at Colonial Bank, they would have detected the fraud. And this court case had been delayed by over a month because of the judge's review of threshold of liability in the case. But all that came to a head at the end of December. Now, what did the judge find? The judge found that PwC was negligent in connection with the audit of Colonial Bank. And this opens up PwC to hundreds of millions of dollars in damages. Now, will it be that much? Who knows? The court alleges that PwC violated auditing rules and didn't take steps that could have detected the $2 billion fraud scheme that happened at Colonial Bank. And after this ruling, U.S. District Court Judge Barbara Jacobs Rothstein will now consider separately whether damages should be imposed on PwC and how much. So that's the next step in this case. Make sure to stay tuned to this podcast so that you can get an update on how much damages that PwC will have to pay out and whether that becomes public. And there's another lawsuit related to this case currently scheduled for January as well. So make sure to stay tuned.
We appreciate your help in growing this podcast so we can continue to bring you the best Big Four content possible. You could help us out by providing a review on iTunes, sending us an email with your comments, and don't forget to share with your friends. There's a link below in the show notes. That's our show for today. Thanks for listening and have a great day.